Welcome to today's Software AG webcast titled Leveraging Information Sharing to Improve Public Safety. Today's webcast will be presented by David Taylor, Vice President, State and Local Solutions at Software AG Government Solutions, Tanya Stauffer, Practice Director, Analysts, and Bob Jeffcott, Principal System Engineer, also of Software AG Government Solutions. As we move through today's presentation, I invite you to submit any questions that you may have via the Q&A box, which is located in the top right corner of your webcast dashboard. We will address your questions at the end of today's program. In the event that we're not able to answer your question, your submission will be noted, and today's presenters will be back in touch with you as soon as possible. Additionally, today's presentation is being recorded. This program recording will be made available to you in an email that will be sent to you later this evening. Additionally, this webcast recording will be posted to the Ada Basin Natural playlist on the Software AG YouTube channel later today. With that, it is now my pleasure to welcome David Taylor.
Well, hey, thank you all for joining us today. As mentioned, prior to joining Software AG, I had the privilege of serving in Florida government for 31 years. And the first half of the career was spent in various positions in Florida's juvenile justice system. I started out as a halfway house counselor. I worked as a probation case officer for a while and finished as a corrections facility superintendent. Now, over those many years, I saw the impact of information systems it was having on the delivery of justice services and its effect on people who received those services. In fact, I wrote my first justice software program for a halfway house on an old Texas Instrument 99-4A computer. Those of you might be familiar with that old piece of machinery. It was used, the application was used to track client progress on inmate treatment programs, and it had some case management features, and it automated a lot of the case reporting that we needed to complete at the time. So working there and developing that application, it opened my eyes to what was possible if we could just automate and share information between all the agencies that our clients were involved with. And I saw justice and public safety agencies become early adopters of integration because of this need to share information, and because the need for accurate and timely information was so critical to public safety. For example, in the past, officers would conduct traffic stops without current information about the owner or the operator of the vehicle. And this dramatically increased the risk to the officer. Now, getting the right information to that officer before he or she leaves the patrol car became a life-saving use of integration. Now, in today's webinar, you'll learn more about several state and county integrated justice projects and how the specific benefits of those projects were produced. But first, let's talk a little bit about the typical current state of integrated justice. Biggest problem I see today is justice system complexity. Now, this is due in part because there's so many justice partners and each have their own discrete justice information systems. And for these partners to work together, they need to communicate with each other. They must share information, but typically their systems cannot exchange that information directly. So for example, district attorneys and public defenders need to be able to receive incident reports directly from law enforcement agencies. Jail and prison management systems need to be able to exchange critical up-to-date offender information before the arrival or transfer of the inmate, and receive disposition and sentencing information directly from court management systems. Law enforcement needs to be able to access probation case management data and in the most efficient way possible. But sharing data quickly, accurately, and cheaply isn't typical. In many areas, this means people are still picking up the phone, mailing a document, or sending a fax. And all these methods are too slow, too prone to error, and provide little or no logging of the transfer of information. This inadequate auditing and the lack of visibility throughout the process increases the risk of error. And additionally, the complexity causes agencies to have an excessive maintenance cost for their systems, which is especially challenging during times of budget cuts. High maintenance costs takes those valuable resources away from critical system development and enhancements. So on top of all those problems, having different and unconnected systems with partner agencies, these agencies must deal with increasing complexity from changing mandates and increasing data volume, types, and sources. And as you know, it's very rare for there to be a reduction in laws, rules, and regulations in our justice system. In every instance, the total number of mandates is increasing. And in many cases, the changes happen very quickly with little time to adapt the current IT systems to that change. We're also seeing a dramatic rise in the volume of data needed to be held, processed, and exchanged between partners. The types of data needed is expanding as well. Video data, which is especially difficult to manage, presents many new challenges. And the number of partners involved can increase as well, sometimes from restructuring departments, sometimes from new laws and new mandates. This added complexity leads to greater opportunities for error, which leads to greater risk, and risk of poor decision outcomes. So let's go ahead and summarize the challenges that Software AG is seeing in the justice system. The point-to-point information sharing increases complexity and operational costs and risk, and that's a very common way of sharing information that we see. Lack of complete and accurate justice information increases risk and can lead to poor outcomes. Disparate information systems result in long process times, duplicate data entry, and conflicting information. Complexity is growing, and this is due to the increases in the data volume, types, and sources that I mentioned. Having hard-coded rules and point-to-point integrations make accommodating new policy mandates very difficult. Information is rarely provided when it's the most beneficial. And currently, information exchanges tend to be very labor-intensive and costly to maintain. So let me go ahead I think I was one slide behind there on yours. Okay. First, so once you know what the problem is, the critical next step is to figure out which is most important and express that as a goal. In my experience, having a clearly defined goal provides a target by which you can judge each decision you make. So ask yourself, is this new project or activity going to move me closer to my goal or not? What we at Software AG suggest as an important target goal for you to consider is getting the right information into the hands of the right people at the right time, all the time. So this macro goal can be broken down into sub-goals, such as the ones listed on the slide. We want to increase the accuracy and timeliness of availability of information. Others want to simply comply with standards like NEAM or be fully CJIS compliant. We might want to eliminate duplicate data whenever possible. And we might want to integrate healthcare data into our processes. There's many, many more like this, but these are just some that we're seeing across the justice system. It's also important not only to know what success looks like, but you need to be able to measure and discuss the improvements as outcomes that your stakeholders can understand and relate to. Without doing that, you may not get the support your integration project will need to be successful. So how do you move forward with a less complex, less expensive, and more productive justice information system network? The slide illustrates at a macro level what a modern justice information exchange environment might look like. Unlike the earlier slide showing point-to-point connections, in this slide, data is exchanged through a shared data transport layer, such as a service bus or an information exchange network. Existing justice systems are connected to this network through various standard integration connectors, such as APIs, direct database connectors, or XML exchanges. Each system can publish information onto this network using controls that restrict the access to only those with rights to it. The systems are then also configured to subscribe to information that they can use and have rights to access. The exchange is nearly instantaneous, it's auditable, and it can be adapted on the fly to conform to the requirements of the receiving system. On top of this data layer, you can orchestrate events-driven business processes. You can perform analytics, you can do pattern matching, you can trigger alerts on events. You can even create entire applications on top of this data layer. And all partners have access to the information they need when they need it. So let's look at one example of how this new environment can streamline a typical justice process. On the slide here, starting with the police department, an incident report must be filled out. What was previously written on paper is now entered into police systems of record, and the report is automatically sent to the local sheriff's department. The sheriff department then accesses the data in their own system. Arrest report data is entered and forwarded to the jail. The jail then has the data it needs to process the case forms, and this data then moves to the district attorney system. The DA can then access and use the data to create a complete case form, which is then sent on to the court. The court can access this form electronically in their system and then produce and route the decision data back to the partner's agency. Our system enables this end-to-end connectivity to be possible. So let's summarize here. An integrated justice should reduce the manual tasks involved, remove duplicate entry and errors. It should accommodate different data types like photos, videos, document imagery. It should accurately track individuals and cases across organizations. First
Dave,
in San Diego,
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now. You seem to have switched off there for the last few seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't click anything, but maybe my internet connection. I'm sorry. I had a little lag on a slide before as well. In San Diego, California, there's more than 11,000 law enforcement officers, adjudicators, investigators, and analysts at 81 different agencies that share justice information using our solution. Their goals were to eliminate redundant data points, increase data quality and integrity, and provide consistent views of incidences and evidence across different data sources. So let's take a little closer look at the benefits of this collaboration. The project resulted in increased data accessibility for the connected law enforcement agencies. It improved operational efficiency and public safety, and many redundant data points were eliminated, which increased the data quality and integrity. System integration was faster due to our standards-based reusable components. All mainframe interfaces were replaced by modern web-based user interfaces. And they finally had a consistent view of incidences and evidence across different data sources. They also saw a responsiveness increase because predefined event-driven alerts and notifications were available, and hundreds of thousands of dollars in costs were reduced. So that's one county. Let's go ahead and take a look at a state implementation. And if you can see that, the Georgia Technology Authority is our oldest government WebMethods customer. Our integration engine is a standard for exchanging data between 85 agencies in that state. And each year, more and more agencies connect to the shared data backbone. In addition to connecting most of the state's agencies together on a common enterprise service bus, GTA uses Software AG's WebMethods platform to securely exchange justice information. Take a look at that slide here. This is some of the information that they're exchanging. So through this implementation, the Justice Bureau of Investigation
Dave, your mic has cut out again.
So they've gotten a lot of benefits over the years. The existing IT investments were preserved. They used all their existing infrastructure, and millions of dollars were saved. Connectivity was established between 20 agencies and 300 business processes with over 24 million data exchanges every month. This improved the decision-making and collaboration that they had available in the justice system. The availability of data between federal, state, and county and local agencies was also improved. And it's so much more easy to deliver new justice services to the Georgia citizens than it ever was before. They're now easily able to adapt to changing local, state, and federal reporting and compliance requirements. Some of you may know Steve Nichols. He's the CTO at the Georgia Technology Authority. He's always happy to talk to folks about how they're using the system. In fact, he frequently speaks at conferences on the topic, so you may run into him. He's a real expert on and a strong supporter of integration in government and justice as well. So let's look at another case study here. The state of Pennsylvania is another one of our state-level partners. The Pennsylvania Justice Network, JNet, connects 39,000 local, county, and state and federal justice professionals together who all use JNet to conduct secure investigations in a web-based environment. JNet continues to enhance public safety through the development of new applications and enhancements to their existing applications. In addition to public safety benefits, JNet and JNet-related projects have saved the Commonwealth millions of dollars since its inception. While the achievements and savings of PA-JNet are many, I want to highlight one very specific example to kind of give you an idea of what's possible with this. So the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry, another state agency, in collaboration with JNet, uses the JNet system to identify and stop benefit payments to unemployed compensation claimants incarcerated in the state's county prisons. The Department of Labor matches and compares data with PA-JNet, looking to see who's in jail and who's getting an unemployment check. And if there's any red flags, they stop the payment right there. There's no pay and chase going on. The system, which began at a pilot in Philadelphia, was extended to most of the state's county prisons. And the collaboration has resulted in estimated annual. So let's look again at some county implementations. The next one we have here is Orange County. And we have several justice partners in California, including Orange County. And Orange County is a very large county. It's larger than 21 of the 50 states in terms of its population. They use WEBMETHODS to convert probable cause declarations from paper to an electronic process. They have also since added some additional functionality and continue to grow the platform. Move to the next slide here. So basically, this started in early 2012. In fact, I think we have one of folks on the line from a company named Sierra Cedar, who is our partner on this project. And the project combined a medium-sized NEEM exchange, an interface portal, and combined workflow across 3 agencies. Let's go ahead and look at another one here. We have, let me get the slide moved. Shelby County Government in Tennessee. It's Tennessee's largest county. And through improved processes and eliminating duplicate data entry, their WEBMETHODS integrated justice system saved over $3 million each year since the project inception and improved officer safety. So let's take a little look at their project goals. Shelby County was able to reduce the amount of time it took to complete most of their justice processes. The data collection and entry times were reduced. Physical storage space was reduced dramatically due to decreased paper storage requirements. The time they spent collecting and responding to information requests was dramatically reduced. And they also reduced the lag time between where one business process stopped and where another one began. So Shelby County achieved those goals and obtained many other benefits by moving to an integrated justice system. The Integrated Criminal Justice Information System acts as a criminal justice communication information hub for their region, connecting internal systems such as financial systems to infrastructure management systems. It provides citizens with direct access to real-time, easy-to-use government services. It guarantees message delivery even when the system goes offline. And it connects to their regional health services, providing accurate health information in real time. And I have one more slide on that to show you a little bit of the before and after of their infrastructure. This is the, as you can hopefully see, they use the Enterprise Service Bus to provide connectivity to all their justice system applications. And all systems can now publish and subscribe to the data that they need and get the same accurate information. Go ahead and look at one more. Southern California County, again, San Mateo County. Their goal was to obtain a much more agile information justice sharing system. Now, using our platform, they were able to replace an aging COBOL system and add 4 new case management systems with 26 NEEM compliant exchanges, and they did that in just a 2-year period of time. I want to note that these exchanges were developed by this and other agencies to be reusable, and often that can help jumpstart new justice projects. One thing I enjoyed about doing technology projects when I was in government was everyone's willingness to share code that they developed with other government agencies. It can really reduce the time and cost you need to complete your development project. So this modernization project was completed several years ago, and they continue to add new functionality every year. And by the way, San Mateo County borders on Santa Clara County, and Santa Clara is our newest integrated justice customer. Santa Clara project recently went live and was built on the complete Software AG digital business platform. The project is so successful that another agency has replicated the solution, and other parts of the county are now looking to adapt the solution to their programmatic needs. And with that, let me turn the presentation over to Tanya.
Thank you, Dave. There we go. So I am Tanya Stauffer. I'm the Practice Director for Government Solutions at Analysts International. So I have been I've been with Analysts for 18 years. We've been in the justice information sharing business for about 20. And we've been in business as a company, as a services firm for about 50 years. So experienced in the IT business, but also have developed quite a domain knowledge within the justice space and have kind of grown up with the standards over time. So I'm going to dive into a little more detailed view of some of the ways that we leverage some of the Software AG platform and how well the Software AG tools and products interacted with other best-of-breed tools and platforms that clients selected in our particular scenario. So I'll go over a little bit about the use case, both the environment, the business challenges, and then the functional areas. I'll talk a little bit about the solution and the external connectivity to outside applications, and then a little bit more under the covers in the implementation. And this is a statewide implementation as well. So, and some of the things you'll notice here that's not the most current technology standards, but first we're in state government, and then in terms of the goals and objectives of the project, it was originally envisioned in like 2009 or so. So it's been a very long time coming, and so you'll hear me talk about those things as we go along here. So there were approximately 15 line of business applications. There were probably another handful of 5 or 6 applications that needed to be built that didn't exist. Pure paper-based organizations, you know, courts, you can imagine. I'm sure you guys have run into those folks where there was never a compelling need to actually convert to electronic. There were, you know, disparate technologies, physical data stores, logical architecture all over the map, everything from, you'll see it here, the relational databases, VSAM flat files, and then, you know, sometimes it's just a spreadsheet on someone's desktop. And then there were all these ad hoc information sharing arrangements. You know, I'll give you mine if you give me yours. Just a lot of one-off governance arrangements and also repeat arrangements. So DMV needed to provide the same file or something like it to multiple business partners across the state, across time. So as you can imagine with that scenario, the business challenges were, it had kind of a human element and the system element. So the human element was just, you know, limited access to all this information. You need to make 15 phone calls to get the information you needed. Then it kind of depended on who might have picked up the phone. In terms of propagating information between systems, many times it was, you know, a very highly trained law enforcement officer having to physically drive paperwork across town to the courthouse, for example. And then in terms of data quality, you can imagine all that duplicate data entry across those 15 line of business systems created many data entry errors, but also, you know, then the secondary result of that is the inability to identify someone accurately across multiple different systems. So if you're in a 3-strike state, for example, you know, a third potential DUI conviction may not actually be properly attributed to the individual because their name was not spelled correctly in system A or B. So the functional areas and the solution, kind of how the solution started getting created to address this problem. This particular state chose to take more of a big bang approach in terms of an implementation. They kind of had one shot. They had some legislation and some funding. They had energy. They had a horrific event happen, so they had attention, and they had support from all the stakeholders. So they kind of looked at the big business problem holistically, and they chose to implement search functionality, information exchanges, and then a few other systems functions to kind of be bolted onto the side of this architecture that would address some of the other kind of missing line of business systems and that kind of thing that we mentioned earlier. So enterprise content management for some of their redaction needs, some master data management to do some of that entity resolution and data resolution across multiple data sources, and then some of the notifications, and then, you know, as is so important in this environment, the auditing and logging features. So this is kind of the major functions and features of the resulting solution. So the products that were leveraged to put all of this together for them is the core solution, the core product in all this is really the WebMethods platform. It's used for all the search and retrieval. It's used for the publishing of information. It retrieves data from these disparate source systems, that decision-making process that Dave was referring to in his earlier slide around once information is coming from a sender of information, making business decisions, and then forwarding that information to other destination agencies. All of that happens within the WebMethods toolset. For the user interface, for the search functionality, Microsoft SharePoint Server was used, and then the search engine that really enables that search process is Microsoft's Fast Search for the user interface there. In terms of kind of under the covers, the Connects toolset was actually chosen by the state before Software AG purchased it, but it is very critical to getting some of the other remote data sources replicated to a more stable, I guess, data store local to the solution, so that then the indexing and the other overnight functions and regular functions that need to occur can happen. For master data management, VisionWare's multi-view product is used, and that does that entity resolution for a lot of data quality. It's already solving data quality issues across the enterprise. And then the state already owned an IBM FileNet implementation, so they just extended it for the purposes of the needs of this project. The line of business applications stayed the same. So some of them, while agencies did adopt and have built new applications, but a lot of the ugly information that was presented at the beginning of the project is still the same. So they've got some SQL Server-based applications. There's still some mainframe applications that are very prevalent. Some of their very important pillar applications in Department of Corrections in particular are all mainframe-based, and we're using WebMethods to directly access this replica as well. And then there are some, if you think back to that search functionality, some of these applications are purely outside. So they're cloud applications, or they are federally owned, so FBI data sources and such. So those items are completely outside the control of the state. So the implementation includes, it's heavily reliant on XML schemas. So the point here was really just to protect them from change in the future, to leverage standards as much as possible, to do as much thinking up front as we could, and we spent much more time in design than you would have expected, because we wanted to be able to leverage some of these more detailed schemas as we move the solution forward, so that then the ongoing care and feeding of the application would be far easier for the agencies. So if you're familiar with the National Information Exchange model in the justice space, and then the LEX model that builds on that, NEAM really gives you the NEAM building blocks, and that defines the messages, and then LEX helps you define how to arrange those building blocks in a common way. So we're using both of these in the solution. For search indexing, the ETL tool is replicating data from the source systems to that local replica, and then the search indexer on that user interface is crawling that to produce the index to increase the performance of the search experience for the user. And I didn't mention, but there's a kind of a simple search, more like a Bing or a Google Box, just a simple search, word search you can use, and also a forms-based search if you have greater level of detail around the systems you might want to get information from. There's a forms-based search as well. And then the master data management is heavily leverages the WebMethods platform as well. And then for each record, you're generating XML messages from source systems, publishing to the master data management application, and we're updating those indices on a regular basis. For information retrieval, so there's a quick hit response back to likely suspects if you are likely candidate records, if you are performing a user-based search. And then you have the ability to, once you see that kind of short list of possible matches to what you're looking for, you've got the ability to then go get the get details record from the actual source data. Again, throughout all of this, security is paramount. The audit logging is couldn't be more important in the solution, and WebMethods is core to all of that functionality. So then, within the publish and describe and the information exchanges that occur throughout the enterprise, these event-based notifications that Dave was referring to in a typical implementation, we implemented 46 information exchanges across the enterprise for this, everything from notice to arrest to court case disposition. But it's pretty much a fire and forget type of operation. So the provider system has no idea and doesn't care what the destination systems are going to do with the information because all those business decisions were made during design. So for example, if there's a DUI arrest overnight, the notice of arrest comes through, the system goes and checks, is that person on probation? Is that person a holder of a commercial driver's license? If so, we notify this organization, this organization, this organization. Is this person a bus driver? Should we notify the organization responsible for those licenses? So all those things are happening within the architecture all the time. I call it the engine that's running all the time. And that the bottom bullet here, again, is to me the most important. It's doing the business rules validation. So that's also creating a higher degree of data quality in the destination systems because we're literally writing system to system. There's message routing based on the business rules that I just described. A heavy degree of logging. If you're not familiar with FBIC security policy, the level of logging that's required there is very important to the system, and it's got to be auditable by the FBI. So there's some simple exchanges within the application. Notice of arrest can be very simple, or just notification of an incident. Incident data, citation data can also be sent through as well. For the medium complexity messages, it's more along the lines of the DMV example that I just mentioned, where you need to do a couple different checks and then make some other decisions. And then the high complexity exchanges usually include the enterprise content management system. So where you're updating metadata for an image, retrieving documents for distribution, doing some checks with regard to the redaction that's been performed, all the security trimming that was developed for, say, a user search needs to be captured and then stored in those associated with those documents, so that when a search does occur for the ECM at a later time, you've got all the logging information and you know exactly what those individuals are allowed to see. Did I mention logging and auditing is important? So here it is again. But these are some of the most common web method services that are in place. The auditing and logging function we've talked about a bit here. Then error reporting, obviously, for message fidelity across the enterprise. And then there's event-based notifications. So when there are particular events for, especially the business made many decisions around what qualified as specific events, but certain individuals needed to be notified. You can subscribe to, if you are a parole officer, you can subscribe to an event or to events related to an individual, such that if anything happens to that person, if they get pulled over by law enforcement, if they get arrested, if they have any kind of traffic violation, anything, you get notified. So it increases the ability for the participating agencies to deliver those greater quality of services that Dave mentioned. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Bob to talk about some of the key success factors.
Thank you very much, Tanya. I appreciate it. We're going to touch just very briefly on a couple key things that we have seen across a lot of our customer base, that they have experienced both successes and challenges, and that we think that are important for not only criminal justice information sharing, but just sharing across enterprises in general. The first thing really is the ability to have a flexibility in the integration usage patterns. There's a variety of different things. I think you've heard both Tanya and Dave talk about some of those use cases. And if you notice, there really are multiple patterns. There's, a simple request reply, distributing data across a variety of agencies or entities, and then also that event-driven processing. When you develop an integration platform, you really need that ability to reuse those services in whatever format of integration is required, whether it be data aggregation, request and reply, orchestration of processes, or event-driven. You don't want to have to rebuild that each time a new requirement comes across, or you end up with, while with a very powerful tool, a lot of either spaghetti implementation or a lot of point-to-point implementations because you're rebuilding the interfaces each time. So you want to be sure that those services, that information can be used in a variety of different integration patterns. The second area that we've seen that is critical, is important, is the ability to connect to a variety of different back-end applications, whether that be from the technical level, where you're actually using HTTP, JDBC access, direct data access, or any of the standard protocols, or just coding, .NET, Java, COBOL, Natural, etc. You need to be able to plug into those back-end applications, especially if they're homegrown applications, or having adapters that can connect to applications or other software, whether it be content, big data, or just your standard COTS applications. This gives you the ability to, one, quickly and easily connect and share information across those different systems, but it also gives you flexibility in choosing and changing those back-end systems. You don't want to have to base a choice on a new, like, let's say, records management system to say, oh, well, my integration of this is going to take, a year, it's going to take 18 months. The idea is, if I need to pull out a records management system, I can remap those integration points quickly and easily, because it's either using some standard like REST, SOAP, and I can connect to that easily, or there is an adapter for that particular package. And that includes a lot of emerging technologies and newer technologies, cloud, the ability to connect on-prem solutions with external prem. And this also includes the Internet of Things, mobile applications, social networks as well. And we're starting to see now the ability to not only do that at the developer level, but also from the business user level. They want to be able to connect services for their own purposes and their own benefits, taking that out of the hands of the developer. And the easiest way to do that is using cloud and hybrid integration capabilities. So we're starting to see that certainly in the commercial world, and even more and more in the business, in the state and local government areas, where you're starting to make citizen information available to the citizens. The other thing is the management of those services, and the term now really is APIs. It's the ability to create, publish, and manage those APIs. And there's really 4 areas that we look at. And I'm going to start on the right-hand side here with API consumption. It's just the ability to manage that consumption, to monitor that consumption, and to actually take some intelligence out of that. But also to apply the runtime governance policy. Who can see what? And as Tanya mentioned, that ability to audit that and to be able to log that information, so you can say, hey, at this point in time, these people connected to these systems providing this information. So I think that that's a very critical thing, is that ability to apply those runtime governance policies. Also, the ability just to have a catalog of those APIs, where you define them, where you discover all the assets, all the things that those touch, whether it be the end users, the agencies that are consuming those APIs, or the back-end resources, so that if you change them, if that you need to make new ones, that you can notify those people. And it's that whole life cycle, from development to deployment to runtime management of those policies, of those APIs and the associated policies. And then the last runtime piece is the API gateway, the ability to secure those APIs, to make sure that people are not talking to the back-end systems that shouldn't be, whether it be external malicious attacks, or whether it even be internal, that you can ensure that the data is protected and only people, even within organizations, are the ones that are accessing it correctly. Again, the ability to also monitor and track that usage. As you extend things out to the citizens, a lot of governments are doing, public freedom of access of information campaigns right now. So this is one way to do it, but to ensure that that back-end application information is protected. And then the last area is the ability to promote those APIs and say, here's what's available, whether it be to the external world or, like with Dave's example, to the internal organizations at the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where the labor and industry developer took advantage of a published API by the JNet environment. So that ability to publish out the API and say, here they're available for consumption for building new applications. You know, we see sometimes here in Florida that private organizations have taken information on different registries made available by FDLE to build apps to say, hey, notify me when something happens, when someone comes into my neighborhood or moves into there if they're on one of the registries. So I think that API management is that next level of integration, organization, and success that you'll see and to successfully manage that. And then the last area I just wanted to touch on briefly was to make sure that whatever you do when you talk about integration, to make sure that that implementation is extensible. I don't have to worry about ripping and replacing things if new technologies come along, if new business requirements come along, if new customers or new organizations get incorporated. And I'm just going to touch on 4 of the ones that we've seen lately. The first, and certainly emerging, is the ability for analytics and decisions. As you saw in Tanya's example, event-driven information is critical today. When something happens in one environment, notify someone else or take action in another system as well. But you're starting to see things about streaming analytics. I have all this information available. It's available in flight. Let me be proactive about things that happen in real time. And now we're starting to move also to predictive analytics. When this happens, we think that the next event might be this, or the likelihood of, you know, this person, if they're arrested today, that they'll rescind, you know, they'll reoffend, or they may or make bail or may not make bail. So I think that that's, you know, one area we're starting to see applied to the CJIS world. And of course, as we all hear, is about the Internet of Things. You know, as we start to move towards smart city and edge devices, and whether that in this, you know, CJIS world, that's body cams, license plate readers, etc., the ability to not only incorporate that information and make that available in your integration platform, but also to take action on that, to be able to take that information and pass it along. So if in a smart city a traffic light goes out, that you can automatically notify not only the utility, you know, that it handles that, but also make an alert maybe to the local police to say, hey, this light's out, go send someone to direct traffic. So I think that that's very critical to being able to live in that integration platform. And a couple more examples is just, you know, managed file transfer. Not everyone's going to be able to do real time. You're going to have smaller organizations, smaller entities that are going to be still having things in a more batch-oriented world, or just, you know, Excel spreadsheets. As much as technology changes, we still tend to rely on that method of sharing information. So you need to be able to handle that in whatever format, whether it be FTP, whether it be HTTP, email, or just a simple file drop. And lastly, and I think you've heard this in all the examples, is the flexible messaging. You know, for so long was the de facto with XML. We're starting to move to JSON. The incorporation of the IoT, you know, their messaging format is MQTT. So the ability to, as technology changes, as formatting changes, as messaging changes, the ability to adapt quickly and easily and change something that might have been a SOAP service into a REST service or something that may have been JMS into an MQTT feed to feed information back into that Internet of Things device. So you need to have, I think, that ability to extend it out and, you know, whatever the next technology is, whether it be quantum computing, blockchain, or some undefined technology that's going to be coming along. You need the ability to plug that in without having to rip and replace the integration that you have, or without having to substantially change that integration. So just a couple key things that, key takeaways of some of our successful implementations of integration platforms. And with that, Will, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you, sir. I've got a couple of questions, so what I will do is I'm going to pose them out, and I will let each of you contribute an answer or identify who will answer. So the first question I'm going to ask you, what is the first step to start justice information sharing?
Well, this is Dave Taylor. Just my first thing there is my experience in justice in any type of information sharing process has been getting the agreement between the stakeholder parties to actually share that data. Was probably the biggest challenge I ran into, where everyone loves the idea of sharing information, but when you get down into the weeds about, well, what do you have, what do I need, what am I willing to give you, and getting some type of data sharing agreement you know, written down and signed off of is usually the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd just add that in the justice information sharing world, a little bit even more complex than just a regular state government implementation, because oftentimes you're working with courts, and the courts are not under the executive branch, so their level of independence is a little bit higher than normal. So find some friends is the best way to start. Find someone who's willing to listen and talk about common sense answers to really solving public safety issues.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd add on that is you really, to get these projects successful and get those agreements done, you have to have one or more pretty influential stakeholders that will drive the process.
Yes.
You know, everyone involved has lots to do. They have lots of projects, and when this comes along, it's a huge additional workload. So unless that's very important to key stakeholders in the environment, it runs into a lot of friction.
Okay, the next question I have, how does your solution handle all of the information security rules we have in law enforcement?
Bob, you can probably expand on this. This is Tanya. I think the key thing that we've found over time is this, in the last, I guess 5 years or so, the claims-based authentication mechanism that we needed to be able to integrate into all of our solutions. There are very few products out there that can actually handle some of those the detailed implementation of those SAML tokens. So SAML was a key portion of a lot of the most recent implementations. Now, it's obviously the standards are evolving, but that was the linchpin to Security Federation, to the audit logging, to all those other pieces that were required specifically for the FBI CJIS security policy requirements. I don't know, Bob, if you have any more detail on that for the product side.
Sure, just a couple things. Because you're typically sharing data across agencies, there is no one standard for each agency, so you have to have the ability to be flexible to that, and we do that by supporting almost every known security, whether it be, SAML with the tokens, OAuth, simple user ID verifications, but also, as we talked about, the ability to ensure secure services and protecting that back end. Our particular solution with that is our API gateway, where we do a reverse invoke access so that we reach out from the inside the firewall out to the gateway, so that we ensure, one, there's no holes in the firewall, and two, that it ensures that complete, as Tanya said, that complete auditability and logging of information. So I think that that's critical. That you're flexible in the security, that you also do ensure encryption capabilities of the actual content as well, and we support all that.
The next question I have, how long does a typical implementation take?
That's a trick question.
Yeah, that's a trick question, right?
Yeah, Dave, I was going to hope you were going to take that one. Yeah, I mean, for counties, it can be a little different. It kind of depends on how, you know, if you can do it in a stepwise fashion, sometimes that's easier than the big bang that I described in my example. I've not seen one take less than 6 months. Most of them are 18 or more that I've seen statewide anyway.
Yeah,
go ahead, Bob.
Sure. I was thinking, you know, Pennsylvania, they connected the jail management systems, 28 different applications across, I believe, 56 different entities, and I think that theirs was 12 to 18 months from inception to production. But again, it really is that ability to, you know, define that scope. Do I want to do a big bang? Their particular one, it required that because they wanted to be able to assure that no matter where a person was, they could be accounted for. But a very simple implementation that they did later, again, that event-driven processing, is when someone was arrested, they said, look, let's see if we should check and validate who that person is and if someone should be notified. So like, for example, if someone gets arrested for a DUI, they check the various K through 12 public school app systems to make sure that a bus driver, you know, that wasn't a bus driver, and then notify that that school district to pull that bus driver. They started off small, so it's an ongoing. They started off, I think, with 12 different sources that they would check and notify. Now they're up to 48, I think. So sometimes integration isn't a project, it's an ongoing process. And by the way, going back to the first question, that's a great example, as Dave touched on, of how to get agreement on that sharing of information. They said, look, we can provide you a benefit if you share information with us. And now they have people approaching them on that, you know, to share the information. They didn't have to go out looking for it.
I think another key point related to project length, in my experience, is if you can break all your goals up, what you want to at the end state where you want to be, if you could break that into time frames that fit within your funding cycle. So if you're on an annual budget, generally funders, people who give you money for things, like to see a benefit within that funding cycle. So if you can annualize deliverables and say, you know, you fund me this amount of money, I will produce this amount of work in this 1 year, and we'll use that success as the basis for the next cycle. That works very, very well. That way someone's not giving you 3 years worth of money on a promise that you're going to finish on time and on budget. You kind of gate it on funding cycle windows, and I've gotten a lot more support with that method than otherwise.
Okay, the next question I have, you provided examples at the county government level. Who is the organization responsible for leading projects like this within a county?
You guys have done more of the county level, but I think it's, again, it's kind of whoever has the either the money or a horrific event. We saw that as a kind of initiating factor. Something horrible has happened in somebody's organization and they've got to take quick action. That bubbles up the justice information sharing problem to the top of the list. It can be IT. It can be courts we've seen. It can be law enforcement, you know, like a Chiefs of Police Association or the actual police chief of a city that's in a larger county. I don't know if you guys have different experiences.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. It varies. You know, it just, if it's incident driven, you know, someone's inappropriately released from incarceration and, you know, kill somebody, then that becomes a lot of interested parties get involved in that and drive a project forward very quickly. If it's just coming from law enforcement wanting system improvements, incremental changes, and while they're at it, they can improve sharing, it's a different stakeholder and a different process.
Okay. The last question that I'm going to pose to the three of you, what do you see as the next big integration challenge in the CJIS world?
Sure, I'll take that. I really do see it as the Internet of Things and smart cities and smart technologies for a couple of reasons. One, the volume of data that those devices, whether they be body cameras, whether they be traffic lights, traffic cams, license plate readers, etc. Whether the volume of data and what's important, deciding, what of that information I should look at. But also, and we've talked to a couple of cities that are working on this, is you're starting to see a public-private partnership. The public says, look, we'll provide this, the cities say, we'll provide this information of data, but we want you to share that data to utilize it. And the example one of the cities in Texas gave me was they want to be able to have sensors at crosswalks, at high incident crosswalks. So you're talking about data at, Internet of Things data within, the city itself, the traffic lights, the cameras. You're talking about potentially smart car information, so the automaker. You're talking about citizen information, their phones that are in their pocket for location services. I'm seeing that is something that the cities and counties see a huge benefit, but also a huge challenge. Let you guys.
Yeah, to me, I get more granular, but it's a similar idea. For me, it's digital evidence, and kind of integrating that so that a prosecutor, when they're looking at their case management system, they could potentially go to a search portal within the state enterprise, and they can then perform a search that I was describing, but then it also brings back the metadata associated with any body cam imagery or any other video artifacts that the state might have available that could then be used for the purposes of working on that case. Things like that. But yeah, making better use of all the digital assets that are available, for sure.
Yeah, I think another big challenge will be as the, essentially ubiquitous monitoring where you have cameras everywhere, both public and private, and all that data, and how is that going to be used? I mean, we all know how it can be used in law enforcement for facial recognition and identify, but if you're scanning everybody, you're going to get a lot of pushback from citizens who don't feel there's any reason why they should be monitored in public spaces. And so tools and techniques around dealing with that conflict, I think, will be more important as we go forward.
Okay, so with that, we don't have any more questions. So Dave, Tanya, and Bob, thank you very much for your time and what has been a very informative presentation. Our program has now ended. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.